right, I think we're going to get started for today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of IHSI's DoD grant seeking workshop. Our first speaker today will be Dr. Jenny Honeycutt. Dr. Honeycutt oversees the research and academic programming initiatives at the CHES Veterans Center. As an assistant director of research engagement and educational programming, Jenny created and directs the CVC's research branch, the Military Service Knowledge Collaborative. She also develops and teaches academic courses on veteran issues to undergraduate and graduate students on campus. Jenny earned her PhD in Communication Studies from the University of Denver in 2018. Guided by a community-engaged approach to research, she aims to generate insight that improves the health and well-being of military service members, veterans, and their families. Jenny served from 2008 until 2014 in the Virginia Army National Guard and has been an advocate serving military and veteran communities since. She served as outreach specialist for the STERM specialty in military psychology at the University of Denver before joining the CHES Veterans Center in 2018. Jenny has served as an affiliate faculty in institutions in Colorado, Virginia, and Tennessee, and has published research on topics such as veteran identity, reintegration, and suicide. Jenny is also a research assistant professor in the Department of Kinesiology and Community Health in the College of Applied Health Sciences at the University of Illinois.
Thank you, Kelsey. So I will go ahead and kind of jump right in. I'm really happy and excited to be sharing this information today. More so just generally excited about this workshop series that IHSI is hosting. I'm optimistic that it will generate a lot more DoD proposals from campus and just generally more engagement with military veteran communities for research in general. So over the past couple of workshops, we've heard a lot about, how the DoD is a research, our mission research agency, things like the importance of writing military veteran impact or relevant statements as part of your proposals, and how this type of work really requires access to and engagement with these communities for research. So I am here today to share some insight into considerations in doing this work and how the CHES Veterans Center and specifically my office within the center can be helpful and supportive in the work that you're doing with this community. So today I am going to cover cultural and operational considerations for research with this community. I will give a very brief overview of the CHES Veterans Center on campus and then a much more in-depth overview of our research component at the center, which is the Military Service Knowledge Collaborative, or MSKC, and specifically how the MSKC can support your work. And then I will conclude the presentation with things to be mindful of and action steps that you can take immediately to start building a foundation for engagement with this community. So first, I want to touch on some important cultural considerations. So for a little bit of context, I could teach an entire course on military veterans sort of culture, and we offer courses and workshops like this out of the CHES Veterans Center that are much more in-depth than what I will cover in terms of cultural considerations today. So I'll share information at the end of the presentation about how you can register and engage with these types of workshops that we offer outside of the presentation today. So to get started, these are 5 cultural considerations that I think are very important to know, particularly as it relates to engaging this community for research. So the first thing is understanding that the US military is what is known as a total institution. So this term total institution comes from sociologist Irvin Goffman, and he defines total institutions as a place of work and residency where a great number of similarly situated people cut off from a wider community for considerable time together lead an enclosed, formally administered round of life. So essentially what this means is people that are part of a total institution live, work, and play at the same place, typically cut off from larger society. Also, being in a total institution means that inside the institution and the culture has its own, cultural norms, its own language, its own behaviors, and it's typically self-sustaining, again, sort of cut off from outside institutions. So for reference, other types of total institutions are things like religious orders and the prison industrial complex or prison systems. So why is this important to know when it comes to research? If you are not directly connected to the military yourself, so prior service, military family, or already really embedded in military veteran communities for the purpose of your work, then it's safe to say you're probably what's considered a cultural outsider to this institution. And so gaining access or engaging with military veteran populations really often necessitates a type of cultural insider approach, which is where we at the Chaz Veterans Center can come in and help you identify and form those types of partnerships for the purpose of engagement with research. Secondly, the US military is a collectivist institution. So for more context, the United States is the most individualistic culture in the world. So it's a very sort of I-centric culture. Well, the military is opposite. So it is very much, others before self. So this quote on the bottom right side of the screen really kind of summarizes both the totality of the institution, but especially the collectivist nature. So the quote is, "Who you are in the military depends entirely on your willingness to surrender who you are." So again, that really speaks to others before self. And why this is important for research is because when it comes to motivating and incentivizing veterans to participate in research, knowing that veterans, that their participation will somehow impact or help other veterans is the number one motivator for veterans participating in research. So it's really situated in that cultural factor of collectivism. Third, as we've heard a lot in the past couple of weeks, the Department of Defense is mission focused. The military is mission focused, which means that action and change is really paramount to all operations within this system and institution. So when it comes to research, that means being able to translate your research into impact. What is the impact? How is it going to affect change for these populations is absolutely sort of paramount to aligning with the cultural sort of factors and nuances of this community and of this population. Fourth, the military is a very hierarchical institution. So it exists on a very strict and defined rank system and structure. There's a lot to learn when it comes to hierarchy and rank in the military, which is why I would definitely encourage as an action step, which again, I'll cover at the end of the presentation, you avail yourself to some of the cultural competency, more in-depth trainings that we have out of the Chaz Center and kind of learn more specifically about rank structure in the military. Why this is important for research is because there are pretty significant implications for recruitment when it comes to IRB, recruiting current service members that are embedded in the military that has this really strict hierarchy and ranking system. And then lastly, the military has been in active combat since 2001. So this is the longest period of time that the US military has actively engaged in combat in the history of our nation. So what does this mean and why is it important for research? A couple of things. One is that particularly the post 9/11 generation, which means anybody that has served in the military since 2001 is or has experienced a lot more sort of frequent deployments to war. So we've been in active combat for 20 years. So people that are part of service, have actively been engaged most commonly in several different conflicts. And with deployments and activations comes a lot of assessment. So pre-deployment assessments, assessments during, and especially assessments after. So this has created what we kind of see in the veteran, and particularly veteran research community as assessment burnout. So it's just one thing to keep in mind. But secondly, as we've been in conflict for 20 years, there's really been a proliferation of research activities, especially around the health and well-being of service members and veterans. So with this proliferation over the past 20 years of all of this new research activity has created kind of like a bit of competition for access to this relatively small population in the country. So these are, again, cultural considerations to keep in mind. There's a lot more sort of to learn regarding culture, but the more you understand, the easier the work becomes to do whenever you're trying to engage this population in research. So now I want to turn to operational considerations for working with this community. So some things that are important to note sort of right off the bat is first, there are no major military installations near UIUC. So there's a Great Lakes Navy training base in Chicago, but because it's a training base, there's high turnover in people that are assigned to that base. So it's not really ripe for research per se. And then there is an Air Force base in Ohio. That's a large installation, but again, that's not very close to where we're at here on campus at UIUC. Two, we do not have a large military connected student population at UIUC to recruit from. So that's researchers who have not engaged with this community yet tend to approach the Chess Center with an assumption that we have this, really robust community of military connected students on campus, when in actuality, we have roughly 500, a lot of which are online students, and not all of those 500 are veterans or service members themselves. So generally speaking, it's kind of safe to assume that when it comes to research, recruitment needs for this population, our students on campus are not the go-to. It's much more easier and successful to look outside of our student population for recruitment. Third, Illinois is a top 10 state in the United States where veterans reside. A lot of these veterans, most are Vietnam era or older. And so Illinois is projected by the VA to drop off that list of top 10 states where veterans reside over the next 5 years or so. And then particularly for the post 9/11 generation, they tend to be concentrated in the Chicagoland area in the state. But it is good to know that we have a large veteran community or population within the state of Illinois. However, there can be challenges to, accessing that population, which I'll share more about how we can help with that later. And then lastly, when considering gaining access for research engagement, there are very different approaches with current service members than there are with veterans, which we will look closer at now. So it is important to understand a little bit about how military service works when you're considering what population and in what ways you want to engage the DoD for research. There are 6 different military branches that service members can serve in. So we have the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, and most recently the Space Force. Each branch has an active duty component and a reserve component. Active duty means full time. So people that are in active duty military service, it is their sort of full life. It's their 9-to-5 job. They tend to live on a base or near a base, and they are fully encompassed in the military institution. Reserve, on the other hand, is part-time service. So people in the reserve, their training or their sort of involvement in the military typically looks like training 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year. In the reserve components, they can also be activated for federal deployments, but it's not as frequent as people in active duty. Also important to know is that the Army and the Air Force have a National Guard component. So these are the only 2 branches that have National Guard. There are National Guard service members in every state and some US territories. So likely you have seen the National Guard on the news, especially in the past year, responding to state emergencies such as natural disasters, and then most recently protests, riots, and activities or operations around COVID-19 testing, and more recently distributing the vaccine. The distinction between the branches and the types of military service is important because active duty service members are more likely than National Guard and reservists to experience frequent changes of duty station and relocation. So this can impact data collection, right? If you are partnered with an active duty unit that gets activated for a federal deployment, or you have partnership with leadership of a unit, and then that leadership gets relocated or reassigned somewhere else, then that can jeopardize your recruitment process and where you're at in data collection. So these are just all things to take into consideration when you are contemplating engagement with the Department of Defense, which is active, current service members. And then most importantly to know, if you want to recruit current service members for your study, this requires you to partner with military leadership and or DoD investigators and researchers, which again, my office can help with, and I'll get more to later. But now now that we understand a little bit more about research with current service members, let's look at research with veterans. So veterans are individuals who have ended their time in service. So once a service member separates from the military, they leave the Department of Defense and transition from a service member to a veteran. Not everybody knows that the Department of Veterans Affairs is separate from the Department of Defense. So when somebody in service, they leave the Department of Defense, and then if they're eligible, become part of the Department of Veterans Affairs. So one of the most common questions I get from faculty members on campus is, can you recruit veterans from the VA? And there's not a simple answer to that, but these are important things that you need to know when considering engaging or trying to engage the VA or Department of Veterans Affairs for research. First, the VA is intramural, meaning that only VA employees can conduct research under VA sponsorship. So you cannot recruit from a VA patient population unless a VA investigator is on the study, with minor exceptions of being able to get hard copy flyers in VA waiting rooms, which has a separate review process simply to get flyers in waiting rooms. So there's definitely a lot of red tape, rightfully so, around protecting veteran patient populations within the VA. Two, typically VA researchers collaborate with academic institutions. However, UIUC is not currently affiliated officially with the Research VA. I actually just had a meeting this morning with the Hines VA up in Chicago about moving forward on developing an institutional level partnership to create an academic affiliation for UIUC to become partnered with the different VAs within the state, particularly in Chicago. So be on the lookout for the next few months for more opportunities for engaging with VA at an institutional level for research. And then again, as I mentioned, when researchers in general think about doing research with veterans, the VA is typically the first thing they think about. What a lot of people tend to not know is that only about 50% of veterans, so people that have ended their military service, are enrolled in the Department of Veterans Affairs. There are different reasons for this. Some veterans are not eligible because of their service experiences, so maybe not enough time in service, or certain types of discharges. So a dishonorable discharge might make you ineligible for some VA services. Some veterans don't live close enough to a VA to receive medical services. In those cases, the VA pays community providers to give care. And then some veterans simply choose not to go to VAs. Some veterans experience what's called institutional betrayal in the military and tend to associate the Department of Veterans Affairs with the Department of Defense, which can cause some dissonance for them when considering getting care at a VA. So some just simply choose not to and go to community organizations. So knowing all of that, there is a third sort of area of potential for recruiting and engaging with veterans, and this is veteran service organizations. So veteran service organizations are nonprofit community organizations that offer a range of services for service members, veterans, dependents, and survivors. Illinois actually is home to roughly 2,000 different veteran service organizations, with Chicago being the second largest metro area in the country with the highest VSO count, with roughly around 750 veteran service organizations in the Chicagoland area. Now, veteran service organizations can serve an entire population, so just generally open to anybody connected to the military, or some VSOs are more specific in who can be part of the VSO and kind of what they do. So some VSOs tend to focus on subsets or groups of veterans, so like specific to war eras, for example. The VFW or Vietnam Veterans of America are a couple of examples of this. Some VSOs focus on injury. So Wounded Warrior Project is a good example of this. And then some VSOs focus their organization around a certain mission. So Team Rubicon is a veteran service organization that specializes in disaster relief. So you may have seen Team Rubicon on the news recently as they are activated across the country, helping with vaccine distribution currently. Often with veteran service organizations, you still need a type of sort of cultural insider status or at least awareness and knowledge to be able to join and engage them. However, they are a lot more accessible than being able to engage and access populations within the DoD or VA patients. So VSOs are typically the quickest and the easiest for research engagement and partnership. With VSOs, there is no additional sort of IRB implications as there would be for DoD or VA. However, partnering with the VSO tends to mean a bit more additional sort of community engagement work to meet the needs of the community partners. That might take the form of needs assessments, programmatic evaluations for the partner, but establishing all of those outcomes and deliverables at the onset of the project and the beginning of the partnership is very important. So regardless of whether your goal is to engage with the Department of Defense, current service members, VA patients within the Department of Veterans Affairs, or veteran service organizations, what is most important generally is to establish rapport and have a point of access into these populations and communities, which is where the CHES Veteran Center can help. So the CHES Veteran Center is a service center on campus serving military-connected students. We opened our doors in 2015. So we have this 32,000 square foot building on campus with different components to it. It is a residential building, so we have veterans that live on our third floor. We offer academic, career, and health and wellness services. And we also have VA on-site medical and behavioral health services from VA providers at the Danville VA, about 45 minutes away. So again, the CVC was created originally to be a service center for military connected students. And it wasn't until 2018, with my previous position as visiting research specialist, that the research infrastructure at the CHES Center really started to be developed. So in 2018, I created our research component of the CHES Center, which is the Military Service Knowledge Collaborative, or the MSKC. So essentially, the MSKC serves as a type of clearinghouse on campus for military veteran-centric research. Our motto really focuses on a community-engaged approach to research. So research with, not on, veterans is really the guiding motto for all that we do within the MSKC. And the mission is to foster collaboration between researchers and military veteran communities. So there's kind of three things that happen in how I foster these collaborations within the MSKC. It's through educational programming, community events, and then strategic partnering I will talk the most about. But first, briefly, educational programming is designed to kind of fuse the military-civilian societal divide and to educate current and future researchers and practitioners serving or engaging these communities. We have a host of different academic initiatives, so things like special topics courses for undergraduate and graduate students. Our new initiative this year is a research chat series where Illinois experts give talks to disseminate research and findings back into military veteran communities. We can organize and deliver trainings and workshops that are much more tailored to specific research areas, targeting engagement with veterans or military service members. And then coming soon, we are developing a veteran community health continuing education program in partnership with Carle Foundation Hospital. So in addition to educational programming, we offer community events as well. So these events are intended to really bring together researchers with providers, clinicians, and policymakers to dialogue and brainstorm around specific topic areas. These events help grow our networks and our ecosystems and are really good at incubating, new ideas. So in the past, we have hosted 3 of these events. They are always hosted in November, which is when Veterans Day is. And they have been on women veterans, traumatic brain injury, and then our most recent one was on veterans in the labor market. And then next is strategic partnering, which is really the bread and butter of the MSKC and where I spend the majority of my time. So strategic partnering is between military veteran communities and Illinois researchers, and the purpose is to create meaningful relationships that lead to advances in research and practice. So how this works is I keep a database of people who join the MSKC. So joining is simple and free, and it's available to all levels of researchers on campus. And it simply requires completing a form, which I will have a link to at the end of this presentation, completing a form with your contact information as well as your research interests. So joining means that you become part of our ecosystem where I have your information stored in our database and you receive regular communications, particularly a quarterly newsletter from the MSKC, as well as random sort of unique opportunities that arise throughout the academic year. And then when I have specific projects arise where I'm looking for individual team members, researchers, or stakeholders in the community to join, it's helpful if you have membership so I can go into the database, identify who would be a good fit, and then individually sort of personally reach out. There are 3 different ways that partnership is initiated. One is military veteran stakeholder initiated. So sometimes I'll have a stakeholder, mostly from veteran service organizations, that approach me with either a research question or research need. Most often it's programmatic or service evaluation and assessment in their organization. So when that happens, I will identify researchers that are in my database of MSKC members and foster collaboration that way. Sometimes I myself in the MSKC initiate partnerships when I find a grant or funding opportunity that I think is very relevant and that I know we have members in the MSKC who that is their area of expertise, as well as partnerships in place in our ecosystem that would facilitate good collaboration around a certain idea or topic. Most frequently is investigator-initiated partnership. So this is when a researcher from campus comes to me with an interest in engaging this community for research. So let's take a closer look at how my office can support researchers on campus. So, you all that are in the presentation, in your goals for engaging this community for research. So if you come to me with an idea or with an intention to work with this community, we can help you shape your idea for relevance and impact with the populations. We can help you search for funding for your idea if needed. We can help you determine the best fit for what military veteran population, so whether it's Department of Defense, VA patients, or veteran service organizations that you should engage with. We can help you identify potential partners, as I've mentioned, both internal and external. So I can connect you with other researchers on campus that are doing work with veterans as well, in addition to external stakeholders. We can contact partners on your behalf. So as a veteran center, the CHES Center has cultural insider status, and this often helps building rapport and even just gaining access to some of these communities and agencies for engagement. We can facilitate the meetings between you and external stakeholders or potential partners, help you establish rapport and essentially speak their language. Over time, we can hand off the partnership or help you develop and maintain it. We can review your research materials for military veteran cultural competency. So even things like demographic information that you might ask in a survey about military service. We can look these over to make sure that essentially you're asking the questions in the right way and being considerate of cultural factors and nuances within this population. And then finally, we can help you distribute your recruitment materials as well as disseminate your finding. So more specifically, when it comes to DoD proposals, we can help review your proposals for alignment with agency mission, and again, for military veteran cultural competency in general. We can review and even sometimes help you write your military impact and relevant statements. And if we can't do it, we can help find someone who can. So we heard about consumer advocates in the last workshop. In this context, I'm thinking of consumer advocates as anybody who has lived experience with the topic at hand. So, we can help you identify those people within our own ecosystem at the CHES Center that if we can't help with the impact and relevance, we can find people who can. And then we can help you identify, establish, and maintain partnerships, which also includes helping to collect those letters of support. So though we offer this sort of abundance of different services around engagement with this community, there are some things that are important to keep in mind. So one, partnership takes time. So please do not contact us a week or two before an application is due asking for a letter of support or partnership from an external organization. It's good to allow around 2 to 3 months minimum to identify and pursue a Department of Defense or a VA partnership. Again, VSO partnerships tend to be the quickest. We already have a large ecosystem of partners that are, veteran service organizations in place at the CHES Center. So if we already have partnerships in place, it can be much quicker. But if it's a new organization that we're generating partnership with, I would say around 1 to 2 months is a good time frame for new organizations to partner with in terms of VSOs. If you need support on a crunch, we can provide you a letter of support from the CHES Center that says we will help facilitate access to the population. And then at the center, we can also distribute your recruitment materials through our channels, our own channels at the center. But typically, we will not ask veteran service organizations to share your recruitment materials for a study unless there is already an established partnership in place for that specific project. And the reasoning for that is it helps us to balance those relationships and make sure there's reciprocity in how much we're asking of our partners in our ecosystem. And then I also wanted to mention and touch on this idea that partnerships are generated from relationships, which are with people, not organizations. So we tend to get excited, and I do this myself, thinking about, I'm going to partner with the VA, or I'm going to partner with Womack Army Medical Center, for example. What's important to really know is that it's not the organizations that we're partnering with, it's people within the organizations, which is why I wanted to make sure and highlight that this type of work, partnership work, is relational work, and it requires interpersonal skills. It also requires, particularly with this community and population, a certain level of cultural competency. So veterans are really good at identifying outsiders and calling you on BS. So it's so important, and it's really, the onus is on us as researchers to do our due diligence in learning the language. We need to be able to talk their talk if we want them to, really meaningfully engage with us in research. And with that, partnerships need to be maintained over time. A practice that we very much frown upon out of the CHES Center and is not well received in military veteran communities is sort of going into the community, doing research on the community, and then leaving the community without making sure that there's reciprocity, making sure that the relationship continues to be developed over time. And in addition, as you can tell, it takes a lot of work to generate these partnerships and a lot of time. So once you have a partnership in place, if you do the relational work of maintaining that partnership over time, it can be very fruitful in the long run. And then this is where impact and dissemination really comes into play, is making sure that the research and the work has an impact in the community. So in summary, research with military veteran communities can be challenging, but it can also be very rewarding. There's an abundance of need for research and programs development with these populations and communities, and your work can make a difference. So please know that I am here to support you, as well as all of the staff at the CHES Veterans Center. And then I wanted to leave you with some action steps that you can take immediately to start kind of building a foundation for engagement. First, I encourage you to join the MSKC. So these are all links. So whenever they are uploaded into Box, you can just pull this up and click directly on these links. So joining the MSKC takes a couple of minutes. There's my email address if you want to contact me directly for support. We have several different social media outlets where we are regularly posting things like events, workshops, events that our partners in our ecosystem are putting on. So it's just a good way to connect is through social media. We have an upcoming cultural competency workshop at the center. It's on February 19th at noon. So you can register by directly clicking this link. We offer 2 a semester. We have an upcoming special topics course. That's a second 8 weeks course on veteran community health. I encourage you to encourage your students, especially your RAs who might be working with you in this research, to enroll. You can attend any of our research chats. We host 3 to 4 every semester. Be on the lookout for our annual Veterans Day celebration in November. And then lastly, I included this other resource. Psych Armor is a nonprofit community organization that offers free workshops and trainings or short videos about military veteran culture. So you can avail yourself to that. And then lastly, we have a new website coming soon out of the CHES Veterans Center where a lot more of this information will be visible and accessible via our website. So that summarizes my presentation. And I am happy to take questions now.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Does anyone have questions? You can unmute yourself or you can drop them in the chat.
Like I said, we can also, anybody that has questions, I have my email address on there. So feel free to contact me directly as you start to generate new proposals and move forward in engaging the population.
Yeah, I really appreciated, Jenny, how you emphasized that doing work with veterans and service members is relationship building. I think that's such an important thing to keep in mind. And I'm sure that would be, you've shared some great resources for researchers who want to build that cultural competency. Do you have any other advice for researchers who may not have ever worked with service members or veterans before, who want to build that cultural competency?
I think I would say generally to not be intimidated. I see this a lot when I'm teaching like these cultural competency courses or even working with students who are starting to learn about veterans. And if you are not connected to the military in any way or don't have anybody in your family that's connected, it can feel a little intimidating to engage with this community. But once you sort of get in there, and if you especially approach it with a kind of spirit of humility and learning and listening, you'll find that the community is very open and receptive and excited to have people that are curious to understand, their culture and their experiences. So it's a good question, Kelsey. Thanks.
Yeah, and it sounds like CHES is also really interested in helping researchers have that impact back in the community, right? That is important for building trust.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, if anybody that has research they've already conducted on the population, I actually have one of my grad students now compiling an archive of published research from faculty on campus that relates to veterans, so we can disseminate it and have it available, for our partners on our website. So yeah, anybody that's interested in disseminating, we can absolutely help with that. It helps to create more reciprocity in the relationships.